You're about to listen to the Complete Developer Podcast, the podcast by coders, for coders, about all aspects of life as a developer.
I'm Will, the curmudgeonly experienced developer.
And I'm Beej, the optimistic newbie developer.
Complete Developer Podcast is supported by listeners like you. We are now on Patreon at www.patreon.com/Complete Developer Podcast.
Interviewers like devs with skills. We're continuing our series on getting a job with the first of our interviewing episodes, the soft skills. We'll start by defining soft skills and then talk about the soft skills you'll need for the interview and in your work life. Finally, we'll close out with some tips and tricks to improve your interviewing soft skills. But before we get started, Will, what have you been fighting this week?
Well, this week and last, while you were gone, I have been trying to get a project out the door. We have very good QA. We kicked it over the wall to our new guy that's a developer, but he's also doing a lot of the QA stuff. And being a computer science major means that he can find weird edge cases to break your stuff. And I was handed a list of 63 bugs. And so I've been mowing through those. And some of them are quite clever. Like I found a thing today where it was pulling back, hundreds of thousands of records into memory, then searching them in the web server, filtering it and then paging it. And so it's like returning like 10 records, but it pulled back like a 500,000. And, just stuff like that. And you're like, what? Why is this so slow? You're not even like, it wasn't even one of the things on the bug list. And then I just go find it and you start pulling that string. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. And that's pretty much the only thing I've been doing. Since we're down a man, there's been a little bit more of a workload. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And so, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time at work more than, so how about you?
Well, I spent about half the day working on one bug, only to get in touch with one of the other developers, the one that wrote the service I was talking to. And, she was able to look into it and she's like, I see what's happening, but I don't understand why. And so she got into my code and looked at that and found what should have been glaringly obvious to me, where when I'd originally written it, I had set it up to basically where I have to send a form to store a file in the service. And I had built this form generator to create the form and stuff. And then I realized, the information that I'm going to need for that, I'm going to need in like 5 other places. So I, created a static class that I could use everywhere.
Except for the place you forgot.
Yeah, except for the first place I used it. And so when I went in to update for UAT, I had forgotten that I hadn't connected that to the static class and had it coded in there. So it was like repeat of the code in the static class.
It was slightly off because it had changed. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You might wonder why I was able to guess that. Because I do that every time.
Yeah, well, after she pointed it out to me, and I realized that was the problem, I was like, I feel so stupid. And she responded with, everybody does that. She's like, that's really common. So, also, OMG, I know now why developers don't take vacations.
Yeah.
I am the primary API developer on 2 public-facing projects and 1 employee interface that is going to be the same for both of those, all of which are either going to UAT or production within the next few weeks. I got back from vacation to a list of 15 things that needed to get done the day I returned.
Yep.
The UI developers had just said, we'll do this when BJ gets back. We'll do this when BJ gets back. And it just piled up to where they had stuff that had to get done that day. But on a happier note, I did get to spend some time with my family last week. We didn't record on Monday because I was out on the beach. Well, I was actually bowling because it rained. So there wasn't a Facebook Live post. We did post one today. Guys, be on the lookout for those around 6:30 every Monday night. When we record, we post those. My nephew is kind of at the Y stage, which is really awesome for a know-it-all science geek like me, because I was able to answer his questions until he couldn't ask anymore because he was either too confused or bored.
Yeah. That's always a good place to be.
But since I was at Disney while I was down there, I have something Disney related for IoTs. So let's go ahead and roll the music. This week for IoTs, I have something for the kids or the entire family, really. It's the Disney Magic Wristbands. This is a product that if you're not a season ticket holder or haven't been to Disney recently, you might not know about their delve into the world of IoT. When you purchase your tickets for the theme park, for a little bit extra, you can get these magic wristbands that are used for a multitude of purposes. If you're staying at a Disney resort, they act as your room key. They also act as your ticket into the park and as the Fast Pass program. So you scan those when you get in the Fast Pass line. Some of the rides take pictures, and you can swipe the wristband to collect the pictures to later be viewed on your account. You can even put money on them and use them as like a debit card at the food and vendors in the park. It's just sort of a fun way to see the Internet of Things being used on a large scale. So who's talking to us this week?
Well, this week we got a comment from Dama Brown. I'm not a coder or techie. I'm a lawyer, but I found your podcast while looking for something to help me become a better listener. Nice job. I really enjoyed the episode. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Dama. We appreciate the comment. We always enjoy hearing from those not in the tech field that do listen to the show. We do appreciate that. Send us an email to neckbeards@completedeveloperpodcast.com because we've got a water bottle just for you. And guys, if you'd like your very own water bottle, leave us a review in iTunes or comment on the website or any of our social media. We post all our episodes to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Google+. We're also on Tumblr and Path. And now we are choosing our comments from the website right now because we're trying to encourage people to leave comments there and get discussion going. Do you guys want to meet us and hear Will speak on why your DBA hates your ORM? Come down to Huntsville, Alabama for DevSpace Conference, North Alabama's premier polyglot technology conference. In addition to Will, you'll be able to hear talks on .NET, JavaScript, C++, and lots more. DevSpace is October 13th and 14th this year. Tickets are on sale now, and to get a 10% discount, use the code COMPLETEDEV or follow the link in the show notes. Again, that's DevSpace in Huntsville, Alabama on October 13th and 14th.
So what are soft skills?
The dictionary definition, i.e. Googling it, of soft skills is personal attributes that enable someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people, as opposed to hard skills, which are more job-specific and technical in nature. Soft skills are a way of expressing emotional intelligence, which is an area of cognitive ability that focuses on building and maintaining relationships with other people.
So for something to be considered a soft skill, the rules for mastery should not be clear-cut. Unlike hard skills like math, your effectiveness may be influenced by your emotional state and that of those that you're interacting with. So it's a little bit, there's more variables in it, I guess, than a technical hard skill is probably the best way to put it. And these skills are not particularly job specific, and they can be useful no matter what your career. You know, if you're doing psychology, medicine, if you're a lawyer, it's quite helpful to have good soft skills, even if you're not trying to do tech. These skills kind of come naturally for some people, and other people have to learn them the hard way. I know you were a little bit more gregarious and outgoing when you and I first started hanging out, whereas I was not. I had to pick this stuff up.
Yeah, but you had a much better time management ability than I did. We both had a pretty good work ethic, but you may find that you are stronger in some of these skills than others, but you should work on all of them to be better at each one. There's a long list of soft skills that employers want. When I was looking this up, I found several pages that just listed them.
Yeah, and there's hundreds of them, really, and a lot of them are kind of the same thing, and at least some of the items are on the list here.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to listen to us talk for 4 hours. So, or maybe you do.
Yeah, but you want to at least change topic.
Yeah.
But we've narrowed them down to 5 basic skills that you need to be able to demonstrate in an interview to set yourself apart from the crowd. And those are communication, work ethic, time management, attitude, and confidence. And we'll also briefly discuss a few combinations of these skills or complex skills that help you out in the workplace. And we'll finish up talking about some general tips to improving your soft skills. Now, throughout this episode, we will discuss our experiences where people have used them effectively.
And especially the experiences where they haven't, because that's way more fun.
One thing I really want to point out before we get started is it's easy to think you are faking these, but you'd be surprised how well interviewers and managers can see through it.
Yeah. Well, you'll also be surprised, too. A lot of times you fake it for a little while, then it becomes genuine.
That's very true. What you want to do is you want to fake it in practice and be genuine in the interview.
Yeah. Or just be genuine in both places if you can get away with it.
Well, if you can't be genuine, but if you can't be genuine with it, make the fake time practice.
Yeah.
So the first one is communication. This skill will be the most obvious to the interviewers.
Yeah, because like I interviewed a guy and dude was so nervous in the interview. He's like flipping a pencil around with his fingers and it like it goes flying across the room. It's like right by somebody. You know, like you don't want to be that person. That makes it really obvious that you are wound up. And he was like crunched in when he was talking and like fiddling with his fingers. Like I'm doing that right now in front of the microphone, right? And I feel
you guys
awkward.
Can't see it, but it's funny.
And it just like it makes me feel awkward just miming that. Believe me, it showed big time, and it cast a pall over the way that we viewed anything else that he was saying. He ended up not getting hired. He may have been as good as he was saying, but it was hard to believe that because he was so jittery.
Oh yeah, you can definitely tell if someone is nervous or uncomfortable communicating with others. Interviewers will also be able to tell if you are comfortable talking to people in general.
Yeah.
You know, because they'll see your interaction with the front desk person or, you know, with other people on their way to you or leaving the interview. I have seen people who got nervous in the interview because it was for a job they really wanted and they kind of clammed up and got nervous. But I saw them out in the lobby talking to the front desk person and being very friendly and having a good conversation because they weren't in that nerve-causing situation. We used to call it in medicine white coat syndrome, where your blood pressure goes up because you're at the doctor.
Yeah. As opposed to red coat syndrome, which is what we here in America solved on July 4th.
Oh, yeah. By the way, it is July 3rd when we're recording.
Yeah, so we're actually trying to get under the wire before it gets dark and the fireworks start going off and the dogs start barking.
Your communication skills will also show if you're able to understand and follow instruction.
Yes. So
that's something that employers are going to be looking for. Can you take instruction, comprehend it, and then produce what they are looking for?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of that stuff it's strange how many people that understand things like wire protocols and how TCP/IP handshakes work that can't understand the exact same thing in like spoken communication. So you tell them to do something and there's no ACK. It's just like, did the packet get there? I don't know. They're just sitting there. Should I say it again? You know, it's like they want TCP in the connection, not UDP. Okay.
Yeah. Now, when you're interviewing, you want to... Well, one trick for interviewing would be to have prepared responses and stories that express your skills, communication skills, and others. Yeah, you can Google interview questions. And each of these skills, when we get to the end of it, we're going to talk about some typical interview questions you may see. But you can Google those and look at, okay, how would I respond to this? Let me get a few stories planned out before I go in to the interview on what I would tell. Now me...
Or just at least have them in mind.
Yeah. I like telling stories, so I don't do that.
Yeah, neither do I.
Then I realized something after probably about my third interview when I was looking for the job I have now, is I was telling the same stories.
Yeah. So you had them prepared. It's just you didn't do it consciously. The other thing, too, is you have to be able to, if you are trying to kind of have a prepared story, you need to have some caution about what the story is and maybe even have a few variants of it. Because like if you go into an office and it's a bunch of, people in suits that don't look like they have any sense of humor, like, you're interviewing with the Secret Service or something, like that's one thing. Whereas if you go into a place that, has got me and Beej at the table interviewing you, like that's two totally different stories that you can tell, even if it's the same event.
That's very true. And you need to adjust not only your stories, but you adjust your tone and style, the way you talk, the way you communicate based on the audience.
Right. Because if I go in front of a bunch of lawyers and those types, I'm not going to use words like reckon.
Yeah.
That's not going to come out of my mouth. And that shows your ability to communicate is you can phase shift and tone shift and, say things differently.
Oh, yeah. Like when I interviewed for the job I have now, I had been to, I think, 3 interviews that week already. And at one of them, I went in and the interviewers, one of them had a button-down shirt and a tie on. The other 2 had polos, tucked in, khakis, and I took a more formal tone with them. Then I went into the interview that I had, and I do believe that my manager had a polo on, but it was like a polo and jeans, and it was untucked. And he gets me in and sits me down and starts talking about podcasting.
Yep.
And immediately I knew the tone was going to be a lighter, more fun, relaxed tone.
Right. And you just have to pace yourself with it, because if you're too formal when you're not supposed to be formal, that comes across wrong too.
Yeah, exactly. Make an effort to add intonation and expression.
Yeah. Like move your hands some. I mean, you don't have to go full on, Italian. Right. Like, I mean, I've got a number of Italian friends and, it's become clear that it's a sign language that's supplemented with speech. But, move your hands a little bit.
I would have said evangelical preacher, but that's just because my dad was a preacher and he talked with his hands. And I do, especially when I'm emphasizing something. I've started doing that more too, because I mirror you and I'm sitting across from you, but do that. Smile when you shake the interviewer's hand. Don't be boring or dry in your conversation. Like you do not want to sound like Ben Stein advertising eye drops. unless you're doing that to be facetious or funny.
Right. Yeah. Then it's okay. Every time I try to do that, I break down though. I can't.
If you are trying to impress on them how boring something is, then you can do that.
Like I had one class in college, and I've told this story actually in interviews where the professor was his tone just didn't change. He could tell you about how a rabid wolverine was in his underwear and it was biting him in the backside, and his tone would never change. And the teacher I'm talking about. It's 100% true.
I do, and I just got this mental image of Hugh Jackman biting him in the backside.
But I mean, it's like the guy could do that, and you don't want to do that in an interview.
Yeah.
Unless you're trying to be funny, and then maybe you can get away with it, maybe not. Play it back.
That goes back to understanding your audience,
right? Because if they all talk like that, maybe making fun of it's not a good plan.
Yeah, that's true, and.
Or maybe it is, and you just want to tell your friends about the interview, and you're not getting the job.
I told Will at the beginning of this episode, before we started recording, that we could make an episode about each one of these skills.
Yeah, easily.
But this one especially, because there's so much to talk about here, and understanding your audience could be its own episode. Yeah. There's a lot to that, and the best way to get good at that is practice. Practice going in front of people, in front of different people. What was it John Sonmez said when he was on the show the first time he was on, about going to the mall and just going and talking to people just to get over that awkwardness?
Yeah.
Get a part-time job where you're in front of people or something. That way you're getting paid to do it.
Yeah. But then you have to interview for the part-time job, and now you have recursion. So maybe not.
So something that came up today, actually, at work for me is you want to build up the ability to explain complex concepts to non-technical coworkers, managers, clients. Employers need to know that if you find yourself in front of someone that doesn't understand the technical side of things, you will be able to communicate with them.
Right. And that you're not going to talk down to them and that sort of stuff. I mean, it's not full on sales pitch type stuff, but like you don't want to sabotage the next guy's sales pitch.
No, we have a new BA that is in a Scrum Master role now. She's worked for the department for a while, but she just came over to our division, and she actually asked me earlier today to call her just to help explain some stuff. She's like, hey, when you've got the time, I know you're really busy, because she's actually the Scrum Master on the projects I'm on. And she's like, hey, when you have some time, I just need some explanation on a couple of things. Because she knew that I had that skill. Part of it is natural. Part of it is being around you, because I don't know if it's natural or you've cultivated it. I think it's a little bit of both.
Like my facial hair.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, people know us, and especially you, for being able to put things in terms they understand.
Right.
And I've started to build a reputation for that at work too.
Yeah, I don't know that I cultivated that so much as that was the only way to get through my day.
Yeah.
So
you did cultivate it, but you cultivated it not as a communication skill, but as a survival mechanism.
Right.
And not everybody does that. We've got some people that are really good at it, and we've got some people that are really not good at it.
I know. My favorite is the tech folks that talk down to people. I can't believe you don't know how to edit the registry. Or you remember the guy from like Saturday Night Live that was, you tell him what the problem was, and he would go, move.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly of that when I was writing this, and I came up with some stuff. Imagine you go to the doctor, and he talks to you that way because you don't know where your radial artery is.
It goes parallel to the ulnar nerve, doesn't it? Yeah. Give or take.
Roughly, yes.
It's in your arm.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
It's easy to forget that we work in a highly specialized field because we spend a lot of time talking with other highly specialized people within our field, or not talking to anyone at all. Even those in roles that are not developer or not highly specialized or are not highly technical don't know all the details.
Right. And other developers may not know all the details either.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to explain WebSockets to people that had never seen that before.
Yeah.
And, you have to put that in terms of, okay, do you remember when you used to do like actual sockets and start from that? And, you may have to do this within tech too. But I mean, employers want to see that you can do that.
Yeah. And that's, I would say, one of the communication skills that I have actively cultivated, because I've seen both how people respond to it and how people respond to you doing it. Right. So I saw it in you. And I was like, well, I like that. I want to cultivate that ability. But then I saw how people responded to it. And it's like, that just...
Well, and the other thing too is it makes things stick. Like you explain it in a way they can understand, with the right metaphor and all that kind of stuff. Like that's why you have things like biblical parables, is because it gets the idea across and it stays. And that's kind of the point of it. Yeah.
Well, that same BA, after we talked, I think it was around 10:30 this morning. And then I got back from lunch. I had a long conversation on Slack from her where she had just like explained back to me what I had explained to her, because she thought about it and it clicked.
Yeah.
The way I explained it, she's like, oh, I get it. And this is what you're saying. And just like long message from her. I wrote, yes, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a difference. And employers have actually got a pretty good way to test this kind of stuff. Like they'll ask you how you would explain it. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good interview question. Although you don't see that as much as you should, in interviews. If at least I have not, probably I would say a good 80 to 90% of the interviews I've ever had, that's never come up. Huh. And it should. It absolutely should be.
That's interesting, because the people that I've noticed that are worse at this are the senior developers.
Oh yeah.
Like I talk to other junior developers and I see the skill in them. Like even the more introverted, shyer junior developers have the skill, as opposed to the outgoing senior developers that don't.
Right. I would agree with that. I don't know what it was. I think it may have been the tail end of that 90s hacker culture thing. Yeah. And, it was the thing of, oh, I have knowledge and you don't. So I have power and you don't. Yeah. And it was that attitude, and that has started to fade away, thankfully.
Well, it doesn't quite work that well when you've got Google.
Right. Google has knowledge and you don't. Now, what does that make you? Less than Google.
Another interview question that you might come across is, tell me about a time where you've had trouble working with another person and how did you communicate that with them?
Right.
So next is work ethic. That is your attitude towards getting the job done and putting in the effort needed to get there. When you're in the interview, you want to weave into your conversation the importance of the company's mission and sort of their vision, like where they're looking to go. You want to know that and bring that into the conversation.
Right. You want to do what, if you've watched Game of Thrones, you want to do what Tyrion does. He always figures out what the other party wants and then figures out how to align that with what he wants. That's what you're doing here. I mean, it's the easiest way to have power is you don't have it. You just align yourself with people that do. And the big thing there is, focus on the value that you can provide to the company. In other words, how can I meet the goal that this company has with my effort? Instead of focusing on what you want out of the situation. You'll get to be able to focus on what you want, but you have to get them hooked first. That way things can move forward. The other thing with work ethic is that if you show good work ethic, you're going to be showing how you handle moral and ethical situations at work. The company wants to know that you're going to act ethically in the company's interests, and that you're going to show some degree of loyalty. They don't want to hire somebody that is going to leave after 6 months after they've been trained for 5, and after they've invested a bunch of time in you, and you're just going to bail. They want to see that sense of ethics and that attention to detail and that sort of thing in the interview. Otherwise, you're not going to get in the door to do that.
And another thing they're going to look at too is that you're going to be loyal to the company if someone is doing something unethical.
Right.
At least a good company, an ethical company with ethical leadership will want you to report unethical activity.
Right. And you don't necessarily have to show that you're going to report it. Like that's kind of probably implied by your other behavior. Like you don't want to come out in the interview and go, well, I would totally report unethical behavior to anybody. Okay. You're like, don't do that. That's just bad. Especially don't do it with that voice.
Back to intonation there for communication stuff.
Yeah. Because, they're going to hand you a Kleenex and go, hey, fix that. But your past performance is a big indicator of what you'll do in the future. If they can see that, hey, you've stuck around and you can explain that you've stuck around and you've worked through difficult things with other companies, that's something that they're going to want to see because they know eventually they're going to have some kind of difficulty and they want to see somebody that has the work ethic to drive on through.
Oh, yeah. You're going to have times at your job where you get frustrated about things.
Oh,
it happens to all of us. It's happened to me where I work and I love my job.
Yep.
I don't want to leave. But there have been times where I'm like, man, if I didn't love this job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had a few of those and I really enjoy my job. And I've also seen other people that did not have the work ethic to pull through and start going, okay, I got to fix this and get back on track. Mm-hmm. And they just tank. And you end up with somebody for 6-8 months that has checked out and they should have left before.
Well, a good work ethic will go, I like this job. I'm loyal to it. I don't like this aspect of it, so I'm going to work towards fixing that. And I think there's a little bit of a difference between the two of us because I'm a bit more direct about that.
Yeah.
You're more, I'm going to work on it and until it gets to a point and then I'm direct. I'm more immediately, all right, let's go deal with this. And hey, I don't like this.
You push, I pull.
Yeah.
Because you'll say, I don't like this. And I'll say, I like this other thing better.
Yeah. Like I'll be like, I don't like this. Let's try something else.
Right.
Here's an idea. You're like, I've got this idea. Let's go this way instead.
Right.
We're doing the same thing. We're going about it different based on our personalities.
So you'll get interview questions that try to expose this as well. So they'll ask, how would you respond if your supervisor asked you to do something illegal or unethical? I have like the best answer in the world for this because I actually had an extremely unethical employer and I was terminated for insubordination. So it's real easy. I can go, yeah, I'm not, I know how many axles are on that bus I'm going under. No. But if you don't have that, you probably should think about that before you go in. I mean, really, you should have thought about that before you're confronted with that question, and especially before you're confronted with a situation. Another thing they'll do is they'll say, okay, how do you balance a drive to succeed with the goals of the company? Right? They want to make sure you're not going to do resume-driven development, but you want to make sure you're not going to be still developing FoxPro applications and 2020.
Yeah.
How does that work? How are you going to balance those two things? And, that's a very good question for trying to get that out of somebody.
And this is also a way that they can tell kind of your personal drive too. They're looking not only at what you're going to bring to the company now, but what you've got in the future. Are you the type of person that is going to go home and learn on your own?
Right.
And continue to grow or bring new things in and go, hey, I want to try this because it's the future. It's where technology is going to be. Or are you the type of person that has to be drug along into newer things?
Right. And, they do want to see that you care enough about your career that you're actually going to practice and learn on your own and not have the expectation that your employer is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
Because that tends to not be isolated just to your career. Like if you're, the kind of dark matter developer that just sits there and just does the thing and doesn't try to push themselves, those kind of people tend to create a lot of organizational problems around them in addition to just.
That's very true.
And you're nodding your head a lot.
Yeah. Anyone that's been in the industry for a few years can think of at least one person.
Yeah. There will be a face that will pop in your head.
Yeah.
At least one.
Next is time management. And this is different but related to work ethic. Because time management has to do with how you manage your time. You can have a really strong work ethic and not get very much done because you have poor time management.
Right.
This was
you
me.
You can't prioritize. Yeah. This was you in college.
Yeah. So this was me in college. I had a very strong work ethic. And, when I buckled down and got to it, I wrote a 1,500 word essay in a night.
Right.
And
when you didn't, squirrel.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that.
And this is one of the ones like communication, work ethic, some of the others I didn't have a big problem with. This is one that I have truly had to develop, really focus on. And it's also interesting because when I was writing this, I was on vacation and sitting across the table from me was my mom. And so I said to her, I was like, hey, as a nurse, if you're hiring a new nurse, what is one soft skill that you want them to have coming in the door? Her response, and I'm going to quote her exactly, is, my main thing is to always be on time. Guys, there's a lot of reasons to be late, but you can plan for most of them.
Yeah.
Tardiness occasionally is excusable.
Right. But you and I both know people that, if they have to go somewhere and it's 30 minutes away, they will leave 28 minutes before they're supposed to be there. And then they'll go in rush hour traffic.
Yeah.
And, they're never on time. Like, it's bad when people start saying that, they start telling you that the thing starts like an hour before it actually does, just so that you'll actually be somewhat close to on time instead of an hour and a half late. Of course, you used to be like this.
Oh, yeah.
I saw the grin, know, and then once you started being on time, it totally messed me up. But that's another story altogether.
Well, that you've mentioned this a couple of times. The thing is, it's messed me up now, too, because you told me be here at 5:30.
Yeah.
Expecting me to get here by around 6 because I'd hit traffic or something would come up. And I always called and told you I was running late.
Yeah.
But it was more times than not that I was running late. And I still have it in my head that I need to be here at 5:30.
Right.
And so when you tell me, oh, yeah, I'm leaving work at 5:15, I'm like, I just left the house. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to be there in 15 minutes. I'll be there before you.
Yeah.
Because, and it's taken me a while to get into my head, hey, I'm going to be on time. And on time is when I was showing up before, not when you told me.
Well, it's a respect thing, too. Because if you're consistently late, it's one thing between friends, but in a job situation or where other people are waiting on you for something and they're losing out by the time that's going by, if you're late, that could potentially cost the company money. You could miss a flight to go out to see a client, or you could get stuck in traffic and something goes wrong, or you just look bad.
Yeah, it's one thing if it happens rarely or on occasion. It's when it is consistent,
right,
that it shows this lack of respect. Like time management is also how you organize your day with the tasks and responsibilities you have to accomplish.
Yeah, and you need to prioritize things and figure out what is most important to get done in a particular day and get that done first.
Yeah. create a checklist with the higher priority tasks at the top, but also be flexible as priorities can change.
Yeah. And the other thing too is sometimes you learn more about the tasks and you get burned by that. I had an incident not too long ago where there were 2 tasks and one was low priority and one was high priority. And I started on the high priority task and I figured out, hey, it's being blocked by this lower level task. It's not a big deal. Well, if the lower importance task is blocking a higher importance task, guess what? It's now a high importance task.
Exactly.
It inherits. It's how you handle pressure and deadlines. So can you demonstrate, part of what demonstrates that is to show up to the interview on time and prepared, including, actually being organized. The other thing is can you work through stress? In other words, when you're in a stressful situation, does it consume you and make it where you can't get anything done, or does it make you bear down harder?
Yeah, you need to be able to consistently think clearly and compartmentalize the stress. Right. Put that aside and go, I need to focus on the task.
Right. Which was hard for me today. I was not as productive as I could have been. I was just really stressed out for some reason. I think part of it was there was no management in the building, and previous instances have led me to believe that when there is no management in the building, a lot of people come to me for stuff, just random, because, you've run a business before, and there isn't anybody else here, so help me with my thing. And so I was like all wound up, and I was not as effective as I could.
That explains some of our conversations today, or I should say lack of conversation. Usually on Mondays, you're your most talkative on Google Hangouts. Yeah.
And today I was just not. I just could not lock in and focus. Most of the time, that's not what stress does to me. Most of the time, I get, if I get stressed, I get a little bit ticked off, and then I'm extremely effective when I'm at that point. That's how I've learned to deal with it. But you have to be able to compartmentalize that in some way and
I will be honest,
get through it.
I used to have a lot of trouble compartmentalizing, especially if it was work related stress or anything but relationship related stress. I could put it aside and be like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I went through the divorce where it was pretty much like dialed up to 1,000.
Yeah.
On the relationship stress, and I had to keep working. I had to keep going because it was there, but nothing could be done about it.
Right.
Some interview questions that you're going to get asked are, how do you prioritize the items in your workflow?
Yeah, and one good answer to this is if somebody whose job title starts with C is screaming, that's priority. And they'll also ask you, how well do you delegate work to other people? If you've been in the situation where you've had to do that. I'm dealing with that at work now. We've got a junior developer and I'm trying to throw stuff over the wall to him. So I tried to throw a bunch of like CSS changes over to him, and upper management was like, no, don't do that right now. You got a deadline. I'm like, it's just CSS, and that's part of the reason I've been stressed too, is it's like I could throw a lot of this stuff at him. He's pretty sharp, and then I wouldn't have to deal with CSS, and we're both happy.
Exactly.
But being able to show that, okay, I can delegate work to other people. In other words, I'm not going to try to take it all on myself and work an 80-hour week when I'm under too much pressure and then burn out and blow up. And they also like to see how you would handle it if you're assigned multiple high priority tasks, because this can happen a lot, especially if you have multiple bosses. Like if you're in one of those hybrid jobs where you do half of one thing and half of another, because I've been in a few of those as well, and then a few of them that were unofficially that. It's like, oh yeah, you're a developer, but you also, you're also IT support.
Or if, you're on multiple projects.
Yeah.
Like I'm on 3 projects right now that all have very similar deadlines.
Yeah. And you almost have to show that you can, how you think about prioritization and stuff like that. Like you have to go, okay, well, I'm on 2 projects. One of them is just me coding something, and one of them is writing a spec so somebody else can code. And if I don't get that spec done, they're going to be dead in the water and we're both going to be ineffective. So I need to let this one slip a little bit so that I can get that one done and then jump over. And they want to see that you have that kind of thought process rather than it landing on them.
Oh yeah. It was like today with that email thing. I was asked about it and I said, hey, there have been higher priority tasks that needed to get done, like functionality tasks that needed to get done. So correcting spacing in an email was low priority compared to this functionality isn't working.
Right.
And nobody complained about that. nobody said, oh, you should do this instead. It was, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then today, when I got everything else working, they said, hey, do you have time to work on this now? I'm like, yeah, I do, actually. It didn't take me more than 5 minutes to fix it, but it was just the other stuff was much higher priority, and I had to get that done.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is how you expressed that stuff was higher priority. You didn't go, oh, this is stupid. This can wait. You just said, hey, look, here's the other things I got to do, which brings us to our next point, which is your attitude matters.
Yes, exactly. A positive attitude in your interview can set you apart from all other interviewees. It shows that you want to be there and will not only be happy in your job, but you won't bring the team down.
Yeah. I hate being in a work situation with somebody that's always negative, that has like the negative clicks and that kind of stuff going on, because there's usually 2 or 3 of them. And you don't want to hire somebody like that. And the other thing, too, is you need to have a general excitement about the field you're in. I mean, we're doing stuff right now that is just absolutely amazing. Like, our grandfathers could never have conceived of the world we live in right now, what we're capable of doing. And you need to bring that into your job. You don't need to go, oh, well, it's boring and Microsoft sucks and blah, 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 and even if they do, it's just, it doesn't help anything. So come in with a, decent attitude.
Also, excitement about the field, be it, programming in general or the language or framework that you use, shows that you're going to be willing to continue to learn and grow within that. When I interviewed, our former manager came out of the interview excited because of my enthusiasm and attitude.
Well, it's contagious.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to be around people that are happy, in general, unless they're just really down in the dumps and they're the kind of people you don't want to work for. Like that's something you want. Mm-hmm. And your attitude doesn't only affect your work. It influences people like your boss. That's something he wants to see as well, too. And
it can improve your coworkers' morale.
Right. Or at least it doesn't make it worse.
Yeah. And it motivates others to work harder.
Yeah.
Employers, when they're interviewing you, they want to know that you'll maintain a positive attitude even during death marches and tight deadlines and rough times. You need to be able to set aside the stress and get the work done. We talked about this, just a little bit ago with time management, but you need to be able to put that aside and still maintain that attitude. Also, if you're moving up into leadership, you're interviewing for a lead or management position.
Or you're going into a position where you're going to be crammed into said management position. You don't know it yet.
That's true. Well, if you don't know it yet, then you can't for it. But if you're interviewing for a lead or management position, you want to demonstrate how you motivate others, even when you're stressed.
Right.
So think of some times and be prepared with stories going into the interview of how have I been motivating to others.
Right. And, and this can even be important, like I was mentioning, even if you're not necessarily going into a leadership position, because you might want to be in one someday. You might want to be just a senior developer that the junior devs are looking up to and working with. Mm-hmm. And don't close that door with a bad attitude. Exactly.
Some interview questions that you might come across are, give examples of how you have motivated a team member. And this is going to be something from your personal...
Preferably not with threats and insults, Even though for some people that works a little better than it should.
Yeah. And how do you maintain a positive attitude when you're stressed on the job?
Right. And that also shouldn't include copious amounts of alcohol.
Yeah.
They don't like to hear that in an interview, it turns out.
Unless you're interviewing as a bartender, then maybe.
Yeah. But there's probably there's some development shops in town here that I think that might be a case too.
Yeah.
Just judging by things I've seen.
So finally, we've reached confidence. And confidence in yourself shows that you trust your own ability and your own judgment. This is something a manager looks for in someone who's going to take a lead or mentoring role. A little bit of confidence can go a long way.
Yeah, confidence is more like salt than it is like, I don't know, garlic. Because you can put a ton of garlic in something and probably still be okay, but you put more than just a little bit of salt, it's going to ruin the taste.
There are people who completely disagree with you on that.
And they're wrong. And it's fine. And I'm confident in my assessment of that scenario. So there we go. And the way you dress and present yourself is indicative of your confidence. Like if you go in looking like a slouch, people are not going to take you seriously, and you're going to carry that vibe. It's weird just how much a change in the way you dress yourself will change the way you think. And we discussed this with John Sonmez. I forget if that was on the episode or when we talked after.
Well, one thing that a good friend of ours says, and we really need to have Guy on the show at some point.
Yeah.
And he said this for a long time: dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Right. And, my wife and I actually discussed this over the weekend, because I was like, I need to kind of up my wardrobe game. I want to look like what I'm trying to be, not look like the kind of a bum developer. One of the better developers I know dresses like an absolute slob, and people never take him seriously as a result of that. Just watching that, you go, yeah, I probably ought to up my game. If I'm seeing that with him, I'm probably not seeing it with me, and bounce that up. And it's also your posture. Like keep your back straight. Don't do the messed up developer posture, like the people that are always sitting over their keyboard. Like straighten your back out. Get proper posture. It doesn't feel like it makes a lot of difference, but it really, really does.
Your body language is one of the first things that employers notice about you when they're interviewing you.
Yeah.
And the way you present yourself, you really want to present yourself as someone that can do the job above you.
And the other thing, too, with the confidence is employers also know that if you are very smart and you don't come in with confidence, people aren't going to listen to you, and they're going to end up with whatever the rest of the team has. And they may be hiring you because they don't like that.
Well, yeah, exactly. You want to demonstrate that you have confidence through the decisions you make and your decisiveness.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest things I hate is people that will not make a decision. They don't want to get blamed for being wrong. And so they'll defer every decision to somebody else. And if I catch that going into, in an interview, I will not hire that person.
Well, yeah.
Straight up. Because I can't deal with that.
You want someone that has the ability to put things in perspective. They're able to assess the information, weigh the options, and then anticipate and accept the consequences.
Right.
They need to be able to go, all right, here's all the information that I can gather. Here are my options. I'm going to choose to go with this one.
Yeah.
And I'm going to accept whatever consequences come from that.
Right. And I've had this conversation with my boss a couple times lately. I advised him in a certain way, and it's like, hey, that's had consequences, and I'm having to deal with those. And he's like, well, you don't have to push that hard on it. It's like, yeah, I do. You can't take advice from me if you know that I'm going to give you advice with the assumption that I'm not going to eat the consequences of the fact that I gave you that advice. It's adulting.
It really is. This is adulting, but it's something that does need to be said because so few people actually do it.
Yeah.
They don't want to accept the consequences, so they don't make decisions. Confidence isn't something that comes natural to everyone.
Right.
So if you do not have this naturally, you can practice acting in a confident manner. And this goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning, which is do your fake it in the practice part so that when you get to the actual interview or the actual job, it's become ingrained in you. You fake acting confident when you're practicing so that when you actually get out there, you are confident.
Right. Well, and a lot of times when you fake it, you get the positive results of the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you are confident.
Yeah.
It's weird how it's backward of how you think it should work.
Exactly. And first off, rehearse speaking with a confident tone. I can say this from experience watching my dad on Sundays practicing his sermon, because I would go into the church with him a couple hours before anybody got there, and he would practice, and he would be just over the top in his practice.
Yeah.
Because when he got in front of everybody,
he'll tone it down.
He would tone it down naturally, and it came out really well and really enthusiastic and really confident in what he was saying. But his practice was way over the top.
Yeah.
Compared to that.
And the other thing too is direct eye contact when you're talking to a stranger or you're talking to a group of people. And you and I have gotten pretty good at this, I think, most of the time. If you're talking to a group of people, you find somebody, one or two people, and you kind of bounce between them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come off as confident.
Oh, I got to tell you, my boss, like our executive director, she will talk to a group of 30 or 40 people, and you think she's talking just to you.
Yeah.
Like, there have been times where she was talking about something, and I went up to her afterwards, and I'm like, I didn't realize I was doing that. She's like, oh, that wasn't to you.
Yeah.
That was to other people in the audience. I'm like, I thought you were talking directly at me.
Yeah.
But she has a way of looking at the audience to where you make eye contact and you think she's talking right to you. I'm sure that's something that she built up with practice.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's had to.
Yeah. And finally, some interview questions on here include, tell me about a time you took the lead when your team was in a difficult position. How do you respond to your ideas being questioned by team members or being questioned by management?
And hopefully not defensively.
Yeah. Or if you do respond defensively, because I do, you tell them that.
Yeah.
I've actually had interviewers tell me they were amazed and appreciative of my honesty.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I can get defensive. I know that about myself. And I usually will react and then stop myself, think about it, calm down, and then bring up my issue with what they're saying.
Yeah. And you can embrace that as well and be like, I do act defensively. However, I make sure that I'm prepared to do so. And that makes a heck of a difference too.
It really does. And that shows confidence.
Yeah.
So those are kind of our core or basic skills that we've talked about. Next, we're going to briefly discuss some complex skills, which are combinations of these core skills that we've already mentioned. And those are adaptability, teamwork, responsibility, motivation, conflict resolution, and problem solving. The first one is adaptability. And this is something that's more important for senior developers, or at least that's what they're looking for. Yeah,
because when you're a junior developer, they give you something to do most of the time, and then you're kind of guided through it, and you're protected a little bit. Whereas when you're a senior developer, the crap lands on your plate. It's just the way it is. Like, you just can't dodge it anymore.
That too, and they want to know that as a senior developer, you're going to have the ability to grow and stretch your more technical skills.
Yeah, they want to know that you're not somebody with 12 years of, they want to make sure that you have 12 years of experience, not 12 repetitions of the same 1 year of experience.
Yes, that's it exactly. They want to see that you can adapt to changes in the language, framework, or current trends of programming.
Right.
Next is teamwork. And basically, you need to be able to play well with others. This is a combination of almost all of the core or basic skills that we've talked about. And it's your ability to work with others to meet a common goal.
Right. And to be able to motivate others towards that goal as part of that, in many cases. And this goes really well along with the whole responsibility thing, because that's the other side of it is your team has to be aware that you're going to take responsibility for your actions and for what you've done and for the tasks that you've been assigned.
Yeah, you need to have a level of humility and willingness to learn and grow and take responsibility for the mistakes that you make and the successes that you have.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I struggle with a lot is taking responsibility for success more than anything. I mean, you've had that conversation with me. I think you've gotten pretty close to going upside my head a couple times on that.
Oh, yeah.
But that's something I struggle with. Also showing motivation, like being able to work without constant supervision. It's part of the work ethic thing, but it's also just, hey, you're not a maintenance point for your manager. Because I hate micromanaging people. I don't want to walk around and go, okay, are they working? And where I work, it's the same thing. Upper management is very, they're very hands off. They give us a list, you do your thing, and if we're having to make rules for you, we're making rules for the company because of the way you're acting, that's not real good. That's a real bad sign.
Yeah, this demonstrates reliability, commitment, and efficiency.
Yeah.
Really. You also want to be able to resolve conflicts. This is the ability to persuade and negotiate. It involves building rapport with others and being able to see things from their perspective. Even if you disagree with them, have a conversation with them about it.
Right. Well, and the other thing too is half the time you find that they're using words that are loaded for you and you're having a conflict and you agree. That seems to be a pretty common thread.
I would say
and
it's probably like 75
mad.
to 90% of the time that is the case.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
And this goes right along with the problem-solving aspect, right? Like you have to be able to go, okay, here's the issue. How am I going to approach this? What is my critical thinking that drives me towards this? Am I analytical? Can I work on it and get to where I need to go? And there's a difference between critical thinking and being critical.
Exactly.
It's not this whole thing of I'm just going to be negative and say, okay, this is a problem, full stop. It's okay. Here's how we can get at this problem and get it out of our way.
Being able to approach problems with a level head will allow you to efficiently find the solutions that you need. The last thing we're going to talk about are a few tips and tricks for improving your soft skills. And these are kind of general tips because we've talked about the more specific ones with each of the core skills. To start off, you really need to prepare for your interview. Look up the company, learn what it is that they value, what their mission is. If it's possible, look up your interviewers on social media. I know we've mentioned this many times before, but you may have a common interest. Something that you can bring up. Like when I interviewed for my current job, I was able to talk to my manager about podcasting because it was something he was interested in. You talked to one of the owners about biochemistry, yeah.
Which I was not prepared for, by the way, in any shape or form whatsoever. Oh. I just winged it.
Well, you made it.
Yeah, I did. But it's nice to have these things, have these pieces of information in your back pocket because it makes all the other stuff easier because you can kind of flow with it. If you don't know, you're going to be sitting there wondering if you're about to step in something.
Exactly. Also, review some common interview questions, both technical and non-technical. And then just some common sense things. Plan your route to the interview.
Yeah.
Get a good night's sleep beforehand and arrive early. Always plan to arrive early because if you hit more traffic than expected and you have a flat tire or you run out of gas or something happens, you'll still be on time.
Right. Plus, it shows a little bit of enthusiasm anyway.
It really does, yeah. Next, practice interviewing to increase your skills. I know we talked to John Sonmez about this. I think we've mentioned him several times in this episode.
Yeah. Well, Soft Skills is his book.
It really is, yeah.
So, I mean, like, literally. And by the way, y'all need to go buy that if you don't have it yet.
Yeah. I didn't mention that on here, but definitely do that because that is something, I'll include that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But practice your interviewing. It helps increase your skills. Highly effective athletes at the top of their career practice what they do every day.
Yeah.
Get comfortable answering interview-style questions. You can find them through a simple Google search. Just start with people you trust, people you know, and then work out to people you kind of know. And then do like John Sonmez suggested, go to the mall and just ask random people to ask you interview questions.
Yeah.
That'll definitely get you over the interview jitters.
Yeah, because that sounds like the most awkward, horrible thing in the world. I mean, when I got to the point where I was less shy, I did a lot of that. Not with interviewing, though. Just going up and just randomly talking to people. And now it's a habit.
I do it naturally because it's who I am.
Yeah.
Also, if you are on the kind of more shy, introverted side, remember that interviews are structured interactions. There is a structure to the interview. There are things that you can expect to happen there, and there are things that you can expect not to happen there. Even if you're not comfortable around new people, or maybe you're shy, you can take solace in a known structure. Understand, though, you're going to do most of the talking. The interviewer will ask you questions, expecting you to expound upon them. If you're not comfortable in an area, give a short answer in that area and redirect to an area you are comfortable. If they ask you a question on something you're comfortable with, feel free to expound all you want. Hit as many soft skills as you can, because they're going to be looking for that in future employees.
Yeah, well, plus if you're comfortable with it, you can also drop hints that you know deeper level stuff about it.
Exactly. Guys, soft skills, they're the skills we use to communicate with people around us. They help us to be more diplomatic, respectful, and professional, even when we're presented with frustrating and difficult situations. When being evaluated for an interview or promotion, your soft skills are what the employer is going to look at to determine if you're going to be a good fit with the team. Technical skills, they're going to get you in the door for the interview, but it's your soft skills that get you past the dozens of other qualified applicants, that set you apart to become the ideal candidate for the job. That pretty much wraps us up. Before we close everything out, Will, what do you have for us this week for Tricks of the Trade?
Well, we talked about confidence, and one thing a lot of people have trouble with is actually having some confidence. So I'm going to suggest something that's a little unorthodox for tech people, and that is to crack open a history book. Read about some of the stuff that your ancestors went through. Read about like how Neolithic tribes handled the Ice Age, or read about how medieval European peasants handled the Black Death and got through all that. Read about the 30 Years' War, read about all those kind of things, and realize that you come from a long, long line of people that have survived things that are way, way worse than anything that you can imagine dealing with. And you take comfort in that because that's part of you. You should really internalize that. That's, I ran into one of my history professors from college a while back, and he asked what I was doing. And I was like, well, I'm a computer programmer. And he goes, and I minored in history. And he said, well, I guess you didn't really use that history minor. And I'm like, I use it every day because I understand what history is there for. It's there to teach you came from another place. Your ancestors did a lot of very epic stuff to get you here. And you should internalize that fact. It'll help you hold your back straighter. So I just want to point out the importance of knowing where you came from. Like, realize that, you're just a continuation of a long, long series of successes that goes back into the dawn of history. So keep that in your back pocket and think about that. And when you internalize that fact, your confidence will be a lot better. That's all I got.
Stand by for Titanfall.
If you have a question or comment for us, please email us at neckbeards@completedeveloperpodcast.com. Our theme music is an excerpt from Stand By for Titanfall by Pure Bells, available on SoundCloud and licensed under Creative Commons. The intro music for IoTs is Hillbilly Hip Hop by Jason Belcher. For references, show notes, and to sign up to our email list, be sure and check out the website at CompleteDeveloperPodcast.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at CompleteDevPod and like our page on Facebook to keep up with the news about the show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.